Hi, Osta, Sonali. Good morning. It's Tuesday morning when you should be receiving this, or maybe sometime after midnight if you're up late, early Tuesday morning. Welcome to week 3 of the course. I just want to say, as you'll probably hear me say every week, I think everybody's doing a fantastic job of keeping up with the readings, engaging with the course materials, approaching the course in a way that it should be approached, and sort of everybody's hitting the mark pretty much on what's expected in terms of the discussion and the journal exercises at this point. I know this past week we've been talking about ideas of authenticity. You've seen a couple of examples, a sort of fictional example. In the end, I think Forrest Carter's Little Tree should be considered as nothing more than fiction. And then David Troyer's autobiographical memoir, sort of reportage of life on 21st century reservation life in Leech Lake and in other parts of northern Minnesota. I find David's book extremely fascinating. I wish that we had time to read the whole book. I think it serves as a really strong informative guide of exactly what reservation homelands mean to many Native people, and also the fact that many Native people, they don't all, not all Native people reside on reservations. So that's why I've had us sort of looking at this idea of authenticity, and to try to get at, what is an authentic Native American person, or whatever, tribal person, and it's probably an impossible question to answer. And you'll notice me doing this throughout the entire semester. I'll ask like a pretty broad, grand question in the hopes that we can attempt to see just how difficult it is to sort of say what's authentic and what's not. Who's to judge of that and who isn't? We know that historically, Native American people have been represented from the outside, and so this misrepresentation has gone a long way towards misinforming the entire world about who we are. And that's one way I think how Forrest Carter's book is able to sort of operate in the way that it does. It's how something as fictional as he can sort of work with that sort of. He's giving a non-Indian reader, I think, many times what they expect to sort of read, and he's sort of faking that experience. And there's nothing wrong with anyone sort of writing whatever book that they choose to write. Obviously, when he passed it off as autobiography, I think he crossed an ethical line. But I think in many ways it should give us. I use that book not so much to point fingers and say, "Oh, look what a bad man Forrest Carter was, a white race supremacist, and all these other awful things," and a writer of quite a bit of hate speech and rhetoric. That's not the point. The point is to say that we should be careful. Everyone should be careful when reading Native literature and sort of seeking that authentic experience. Because I think that I hope to, over the course of this semester, that we'll see that authenticity is extremely personal, I would say, first of all, but it's also something that is so multifaceted that it may almost be impossible to sort of hold. But that doesn't mean that there are not sort of authentic experiences. I think we see a glimpse of that in what David Troyer gives us in Res Life. I think that we see, we'll read about some of that level of authenticity in terms of the fictional representations of experience that we'll read. But we need to keep in mind that the books that we're reading are just that, artistic representations, and they're not the lived experience. So I think, in the way that we find so much variety in the lived experiences of other cultural groups around the world, we should also allow us as Native Americans and those of us who are studying this subject to allow that same breadth of individuality and that same breadth of difference to occur within Native American tribal communities and how Native people choose to identify themselves. And it's tough. It's an interesting question. So what I have done is I've gone ahead, I posted, there's an image sort of attached with this. I know you were asking your journal exercises for this week to work on an image, to pull some images down from the internet. I've attached a sort of a composite of images that I think the people that you see within here are indeed probably are indeed probably as authentic and in their representation of themselves as anyone else. So I ask you just to take a quick look at that. For this week, for week 3, we will be beginning reading Charles Eastman's From the Deep Woods to Civilization. I think you will see that Eastman's life was one because of where he grew up at a point of history, born in early 1850s, dies in around 1938 or so. He lived a broad expanse across one of the most traumatic, I think, periods of Native American history, and his life goes through many different changes as he sort of goes through life. And he's here to sort of give us this autobiography as one of the first autobiographies written by a Native person about their life and their not just his life, but also his intellectual life and his philosophical life, and for him what it meant to be Dakota. Please take a look at the quick, really brief sort of. It's just a sampler of a documentary of his life that is yet to be produced. That's still in production. Oyesa, the sampler, it's on the assignment page. Please take a look at that. I think something that's really important for us to keep in mind when we watch that documentary is to notice that these Dakota people, where Eastman grew up, broke away from the tribe and founded their own community in what's now North Dakota, was just the Dakota Territories at the time. So they were fiercely independent. They broke away from the tribe and founded their own city, essentially, and escaped themselves out from under the sort of reservation system. And I think when you understand that about Eastman's contemporary relatives, you'll notice that it goes a long way towards explaining his representation of the reservation space as he sees it. So we'll spend about the next 2 or 3 weeks, about the next 3 weeks on Eastman. You'll have a response paper at the end of week 5, so read closely, follow along. Any questions, as always, reach out to me. I'm always happy to help. Have a good week. Stay safe. Okay, let's stop.